So it's Friday and time again for our weekly update that we've been in the habit of doing now for almost a little over 3 months, actually, as we ramped up to deal with the COVID pandemic, and now we're actually beginning to ramp down, which I'll talk about in a moment. And so Sean and I appreciate these times where we can just share with you what's been going on and maybe what's to come yet as well. So let me start by just touching on the COVID pandemic and the work that we continue to do. It certainly has taken a turn, if you will, in the last several weeks, from the intensity of battling the virus to certainly staying on solid footing in managing things and infection control procedures and so forth. But really, a lot of energy and time going in right now to sort of the reopening that's beginning. And so there's a lot of work to do there. It's not just a matter of flipping that switch. So our work there feels very different now, feels better, feels lighter. And yet again, we stay on high alert to assure we don't have any spikes or any infections that pop back up on us here. So that feels good, and we're glad to report that. However, we come together today and with you and our Wellspring family and our communities all around us with heavy hearts, a lot of hurt, a lot of pain, a lot of just challenging times for us in our communities and in the family of Wellspring, for that matter, as we see the sort of this other plague that is now in full bloom in front of us here. This plague of racial injustice, as we think about the killing of George Floyd and that coming on, the recent heels of the deaths of Ahmaud Arbery and Breonna Taylor, and just really the latest in a long line of those sorts of deaths that have reached the level of just outrage and shock. And so we've spent a better part of this week thinking about that, talking about that, learning about that, and listening to one another so that Wellspring moves forward with strength and with plans to participate in the healing and in the solutions. So Sean, I just maybe ask you to jump in and reflect a little bit on this past week as well.
Yeah, Dave, I think what we're seeing, and certainly what I and others are feeling, is just a sense of exhaustion and anger and sadness coming off of the COVID pandemic, which we're thankful is starting to wane, but at the same time laid bare the economic and social inequality that we have in this country. And as we saw the disproportionate impact for certain communities of the virus and the economic fallout from it, to have that followed up with the killings of more people of color over the last month, it's been tough. And I think there are raw nerves and sort of trauma that's being brought up for people coming out of those two very recent experiences. And at the same time, I think I'm seeing staff really expressing an interest in wanting to learn more, how they can support each other and come together, how we can start to address some of this through our services and our work, and how we can support our clients and families in the community through this. So as difficult and as emotionally raw as our current circumstances are, I think I'm also seeing a renewed sense of unity, hope, and a commitment to action.
Yeah. And as you know, Sean, we've spent some time this week really thinking about Wellspring's response, both short and long term, to all of this. And one of the things that we've reminded ourselves of, or rediscovered, shall I say, is that everything we do at Wellspring, we think it through, we see it through the lens of our mission and our programs that express mission. And we actually believe that Wellspring is well positioned to make an impact in the communities we serve. I mean, this problem on the one hand is bigger than any one of us. It's bigger than Wellspring, certainly. And yet, from our missional programmatic perspective, we really do believe we have opportunity to address the challenges that are before us. And you use the word, and rightly so, the disparities that have been exposed. And we've already been doing some work in that area of disparities in our child welfare and family preservation work. And we know we can do that in really all of our programs. So if you would just touch on that work and how we see it extending in this important time now.
Yeah, and there are some areas of our work, Dave, that I'm particularly proud of. This is definitely one of them. We've really led the way in the state on trying to use data to identify where outcomes look different for some people that we serve versus others, and to try to identify the roots of why that is. And through education and support of our staff and reviewing our processes differently, trying to change why outcomes look different for some rather than others. And we started that work in family preservation, where Wellspring is the largest provider of family preservation services in the state. And we've actually invited other providers, both in family preservation and foster care around the state, to join us in sharing their data, disaggregating it together, reviewing it, and strategizing on how to educate, train, supervise our staff, and change our processes to eliminate the impact of unconscious bias in decision-making and services. And we're seeing outcomes look different for people as a result of that, which is really exciting. I think our understanding of trauma and its impact on people for their lifetime has grown, and we've committed ourselves to figuring out how we can approach every aspect of our work in every one of our services with that lens on. And I think that's allowed us to understand people's experiences differently and how those play out in their life today. And has really woken some staff up to why difference exists the way it does, and where our bias sort of gets in the way of us understanding people's experiences. Those are just a couple examples of the work that we've committed ourselves to that we're doing that I think is having an impact on disparity and disproportionality. And we expect that we're only going to redouble those efforts in the coming years, months, years, weeks.
So those are two great examples of commitments that Wellspring has already made, work we've already begun, that will, we believe, add to our ability to be relevant in this conversation, and not just in the conversation, but in the real work of change in our communities and in the families we serve in particular. And as you pointed out, we've got our sort of trauma-informed model that is being built and has been built at Wellspring. The work we're doing in disparity, the fact that work led to other agencies coming alongside us and really building a coalition of agencies. That's the way we will transform things. And so the opportunity for us in all of this is, again, through that missional programmatic perspective, to really double down on all of this and say, what do we need to change now internally, sometimes personally, certainly organizationally, to really make good on that. And I think that's the work before us right now. I know it's the work that I'm committed to in terms of much more deeper understanding of how it is our work can do what it's supposed to do, and that is transform communities. And we need to do that in light of the now laid bare injustice that is before us, that has been before us, but has not been this clear, not been this raw, and does present an opportunity for us. So, Sean, as you think about sort of what's next in all of this, just sort of a couple of sort of wrap-up words about how you're viewing all this too.
Yeah, I think in terms of what's next, it's expanding that work that we've started in some areas to identify and tackle disproportionality. And it's not, we talked about child welfare, but we see it in our senior services, in the kinds of access people have based on insurance, based on their economic status, the kinds of services that they are able to get and that are provided to them. we're committed to expanding that disproportionality work to every part of our services at Wellspring. Along with that, we're committed to educating our staff in a different way so that they show up for our clients differently and are able to make sure that where their chances look different for some rather than others, that's changed, partly because our staff are changed. And we're committed to providing spaces for people to be able to share their experiences and trauma so we can start the healing process and so we can learn from each other from those experiences. I think those are three really concrete things that we've identified as an organization we've started work on and are going to be accelerating and committing ourselves, redoubling our commitment to those efforts. And,
we've been through this intense 3 months of battling the virus, right? And we've seen the entire organization, really our communities at large, but our organization, Wellspring, really energized about that, mobilized around it, unified because we knew what we had to do, and sustained that in a way that is really, I think, a analogy of sorts for what we need to bring to this, right? The intensity, the focus, the commitment, all of the things that we know take energy and take leadership. And I know, Sean, you and I are personally and professionally committed to that and to putting our collective work into play here in a way to really make a difference. So, and the last thing I'll just want to wrap up and remind us all that through everything we go through, Wellspring understands what we do and what's happening around us through this lens of faith. Our mission statement starts very boldly by saying we are motivated by Christ's love. And as such, we must move into this space of injustice and be part of the solution. You cannot claim to be motivated by God's love and sit back and see our brothers and sisters hurting and, in fact, even threatened. And so there's room for us in this. We need to be in this space, and we will be in this space. And I know that Wellspring has a unique opportunity to be that light in the lives of people we serve, and also in the lives of the people we get to serve with. And so that's our focus. We will continue our work on COVID as long as we must. We're not losing sight of that, but very, very passionately and urgently getting into this area of dealing with racial injustice and equity. And so I would ask, as I always do, for your continued support, encouragement, prayers, all the things that we know add lift to the work we do. And so we would ask for that again, as always, and remind you to be well, and God bless. Thank you.